What's up, everyone? Welcome into another Game Day update. I'm Kelcey. That's Mike. We are talking today, round one, game two. The Grizzlies looking to even the series with the Minnesota Timberwolves. The game will tip off tonight at FedExForum at 7:30 p.m. Mike, I feel like we've all been unpacking game one for a few days now. We've had time to sit and relax. So let's get into a few things you want to see get better in game two, and we'll talk about how that can happen going into tonight's game. I think number one is going to be the hot start. And I'm going chronologically because the Grizzlies in the regular season led the league in first quarter points. Minnesota, though, they were number two. So the T-Wolves took a double-digit lead at the end of the first quarter in game one, 41-33. It just didn't seem like it. You know what it looked like? It looked like the Grizzlies hadn't played real basketball in a week.
It looked like, Kelcey, and you make a great point. You know, this wasn't a surprise that both teams got off to a hot start. What was a surprise was that the Grizzlies' defense didn't come in tow. Minnesota played like a team that was still playing a one-game play-in tournament. Mm-hmm. The Grizzlies looked like a team that knew that they had 7 games to figure out when 4. Now that you said these 2 days, this extra day of prep time, we've exhausted all the storylines. They just got to get back out there and play. And I think you're going to see both teams make an adjustment for sure going into game 2 tonight.
All right, so you brought up defense, so let's go down that rabbit hole. The Grizzlies gave up 130 points in game one. Let's talk about what you'd like to see different in terms of the Grizzlies defense. And it's easy kind of, Mike, to be like, let's have it more intense. But like realistically, the Grizzlies know it needs to be more intense. Do you see the matchups changing a bit? Because I had mentioned when we did our game day update for game one, I had assumed that Steven Adams was going to be on Vanderbilt so he could kind of like hang back and chill. He was on Cat. Do we see any adjustments being made?
You pointed that out, and that was one that I think Taylor had to see it play out the way it did in game one for him to make that adjustment. I think he wanted to go in assuming that Steven was going to be okay. That's a natural matchup adjustment that can be made. I also think you have to force Anthony Edwards to put the ball on the floor, force him into your defense. Don't allow him to step up and make those pull-up threes. And that's a contested shot. But I think he got a lot of those threes off with guys backing off of him, afraid of his dribble drive. You got to force him into help and allow your weak side help defenders to rotate over. So I think defensively, those are 2 adjustments that can be made. I also don't mind going to Brandon Clark a little bit earlier in that matchup with Karl Anthony Towns. Also, another one, don't discount Kyle Anderson's ability with his long arms at 6'9" to be able to defend Karl Anthony Towns too. I would also like to see that kind of switch happen if it can.
Yeah, I like Kyle, Brandon, and Jaren Jackson Jr. covering Cat. And if we're talking defense and we're talking Cat, we're talking Jaren Jackson Jr., how does he avoid foul trouble? The Grizzlies need him on the floor tonight.
Don't hunt offensively. I mean, 2 of those fouls that he got were offensive fouls where he's trying to do too much. If he can just limit offensive fouls and then utilize his 5 for the defensive side of the ball, I think he can pace himself a little bit better. Forcing the action, trying to go after a ball that's not necessarily his, he's got to back up. Let other guys go after those kind of loose balls when it's a 50-50 situation and he doesn't feel like he can get there. So if he could just be smarter with 1 or 2 fouls, I think that'll help him out from that standpoint.
All right, let's talk about 50-50 balls quickly. Then you are just putting me, we not rehearsed this, but he is putting me into my segue so perfectly. 50-50 balls. Dylan Brooks came out at the end, or like at the presser at the end of game one, and said this series is going to be defined by 50-50 balls. He said it's real grit and grind, expletive. Jaren Jackson Jr. needs to back off a bit. That's what we're saying, just so he doesn't pick up those fouls when he's diving for a ball or whatever. Who do you want to see step up? Because personally, I think we can see a lot more from D'Anthony Melton in terms of just those hustle plays. But I'm curious on your end, who you think in terms of getting those 50-50 balls, in terms of getting those things that don't show up on the stat line. It could be Steven Adams, it could be whoever. Who needs to be that spark?
You know what? I think it's 2 guys coming off the bench in terms of those 50-50 balls. I think it's Kyle Anderson and I think it's D'Anthony Melton. You mentioned D'Anthony as well. I mean, those are the guys that do sort of the X factor, Mr. Everything's kind of guys on both ends. And when it's you know, a guy like Kyle, he can be a secondary playmaker and facilitator, especially when Jai's off the ball. And when it's D'Anthony, he could be a defensive spark plug to get you back into those transition baskets and those opportunities. So if you can force the Timberwolves into turnovers, they gave up, I think, 26 points on turnovers, but they only had 4 turnovers in the second half, the Timberwolves. So the Grizzlies have to get those guys to get out of their rhythm, force some turnovers early again, and try to make them pay. I don't think Minnesota's going to make the kind of tough shots that they made in game one. And I also don't think the Grizzlies are going to miss 23 pointers. So we're going to see a regression to the mean on both sides, and you're going to get a much better consistently played game. I just think the Grizzlies got to get back to their defensive tendencies.
Yeah, you mentioned the turnovers. They finished with 18. So that means they had 14 turnovers in the first half. The Grizzlies obviously want to be able to capitalize that going into game two. Here's the other thing, and it comes in terms of offense. The Grizzlies have never had a problem scoring. They scored 117 points. Still, it's a good game against pretty much anyone else. 130 on the defensive end was where it hurt. But the thing that I saw was a lot of stagnant offense. It was a lot of, towards the end of the game, give the ball to Josh, stand around and let him kind of drive ISO. He went to the line 20 times. So, I mean, it works to a certain extent, but you need other people to be able to put numbers up. And this team has shown all regular season that they have the best offense when everybody is contributing, everybody eats. 64% of their shots in game one were assisted. And of the unassisted baskets, they only shot 23%. And I think that says a lot about what this team does as a team. So having Ja just kind of drive and hope to get a call is not necessarily their best offense. So Ja put up numbers if you just look at the box score. Dylan put up numbers if you just put up the box score, but they need like a third, fourth person. And unfortunately, I don't think they got that in game one. Who's the big scorers that they need tonight?
Great point as usual. Basically, when Ja had his rhythm, they wanted Ja to be in that position. They let Ja, you do what you need to do. We'll take care of everybody else. And so you basically fed right into what the Timberwolves wanted to do. And then when they wanted to cut the water off on Ja late in the fourth quarter, they did. He couldn't get to the basket and score all the way. So what you have to do is that Ja has to understand that, hey, this is what they want us to do. Let's dictate what we want to do. So when he said the other day, I need to identify one dribble sooner where I can spray the ball out and not over dribble and set up assists. I need to be able to spray the ball to my teammates, get guys open shots. I think that's what's going to have to happen. This needs to be – Desmond Bane statistically had a decent game, but he wasn't remarkable. I think we need Desmond Bane to be remarkable. I think we need, again, when you look at who else, Dylan had a great statistical game. As you said, Ja had a great statistical game, but they just weren't impactful at times when the Grizzlies needed it. They need easier baskets, more assists, more transition opportunities to score in more of a flow. And I think if they can get to that pace, they'll be fine.
Yeah. Plus, this sounds so cliche, Mike, but they play the best when they have fun. Like when they get out and run and like,
right.
And
they had that. Kelcey, they got there. They got there late in the first quarter, early in the second when they went to that bench the first time. And, Zaire Williams had a couple dunks off of lobs. Tyus was able to get his floater going a little bit, but they couldn't sustain that bench production. Now this is going to have to be a game where you offset the Timberwolves bench. And Malik Beasley is a guy that he can't be the best reserve player in a game for a second game in a row. The Grizzlies have to offset him with another guy that can step up just like that off the bench.
Yeah. Speaking of Malik Beasley, it's one of those things where now you're playing the same team back to back for a potential 7 games. You have to be able to know personnel. Malik Beasley should not be able to put up 10 uncontested 3-pointers.
Right. And he's been doing that for 2 different teams now. He did that in obviously Denver. He's doing that, in Minnesota. So he's got to be able to guy that you got to identify. You also got to not allow Anthony Edwards to get into those rhythm step pull-up threes as well. So you eliminate those 2 things, I think you're going to be fine. But again, these teams are evenly matched. It's not like you adjust 1, 2, or 3 things and suddenly the Grizzlies are going to be blowing this team out. I still see this as a hotly contested series both ways.
Yes, it's going to be good. And what's that? Okay, I don't know if you know this old saying, if it's just like a thing to make us feel better as like the athletes, but the series starts when the home team loses a game. So the home team has lost a game. The series starts tonight, folks. The game is at 7:30 at FedExForum here in Memphis. If you are staying at home, make sure you are tuned in to Bally Sports Southeast. Mike, let's get it.
Let's get it. I'm ready. Game 2. Let's go.